Welcome. Today is the 4th day of Av, the 8th of August, and we're looking at the 5th reading of Parshat Devarim. And this reading starts in Deuteronomy 2, verse 2. And Moses is recounting the war with, or the passage that the Israelites had to take around Moab and Ammon, the two nations that lived to the southeast of the land of Canaan. And then he also mentions how they had to go around the land of Seir, which is really the land of the Edomites. And the Edomites are the descendants of Esau. And like when we read it in the book of Numbers, he mentions here again this very important verse that we've been talking about a lot. Let me just read it to you in English. And we're looking at verse 8. Deuteronomy 2, verse 8. But despite our peaceful overtures, the Edomites did not allow us to pass through their land. So we departed from our kinsmen, the descendants of Esau. You know, here it translated it as kinsmen, but in Hebrew it literally means our brothers, the children of Esau, who dwelt on Seir, on the mountain of Seir, by way of the Arava, the plain, and so on. So again, Moses refers to the descendants of Esau as their brothers. We've talked a lot about this and why this is important, because Esau was always considered to be part of Isaac and Rebekah's family, and even though he went his own way, he still respected them, and he was still connected to them. And throughout the rabbinic literature, Esau is referred to as a Yisrael Mumar. Yisrael Mumar means an Israelite, meaning a Jew, who has gone to a different religion. Mumar means that he doesn't accept the commandments. And that was already in the time of the patriarchs, in the time of Isaac and Rebekah. One might ask, what commandments did he not accept? Well, clearly there was one that he didn't accept, and that had to do with circumcision. That was the commandment that they had from Abraham already. So we know that those descendants, even though they're Semites, and later there's a whole question: how did the Edomites even become the Romans? How did that actually work? So there's a lot of discussion in the rabbinic literature about how that actually happened, what the story is. The Romans weren't Semites; they were from Japheth, the other son of maybe the older son of Noah, and they lived in Europe. So how exactly did that work? So there's a whole discussion. I don't want to get into it because a lot of it is considered to be either serious or not serious. I can tell you that in history books until the 18th century, this was commonly known. It was known that the Edomites had become the Romans, and exactly what the mythological story of Rammus and Romulus were, and how that all works into it. Again, it's not our topic right now. What we want to look at, there's a number of different topics we could choose here that are all very interesting. I want to choose one of them. And we said we're describing here the war that the Israelites had with Sichon. Sichon is apparently some giant, and he lives in a city called Heshbon. He's part of the Amorites. And something amazing happens in this war, which is not commonly known. Most people know that Joshua made the sun stop. And that's the famous phrase, Shemesh begivon dom, Yareach be'emek Ayalon. This was all done in the valley of Elon, which is about 20 minutes from Jerusalem today by car. And there's actually a very nice place where you can see exactly the entire valley underneath you. And Joshua was pursuing some of the Canaanite nations, and in order to have more time, he made the sun stop. That's what it says. He called out, the sun will stop in Givon. Givon is actually closer to Jerusalem, so the sun was heading on its way to the west to set, and it stopped there. And Yareach be'emek Ayalon, and the moon, which was ahead of the sun, like it is many times, he stopped it over the valley of Ayalon. So that's well known. It's a verse from Joshua. But what's less well known, there are two other people who made the sun stop, and one of them is mentioned here. And where do we see this? This is in Deuteronomy 2:25, and God says, again, Moses is repeating what happened. So he says that God said to him, "Today I will begin to place the dread of you and the fear of you upon all the nations that dwell under the entire heaven, who will hear reports of you and tremble and be in trepidation because of you." Now this is a very interesting concept. What do you mean? How can you place the fear of Moses? God is talking about Moses. How will the fear of Moses be known everywhere in the world? Well, the likely candidate is exactly this type of event. Because think about it for a second. If the sun stops moving, whatever that means, then the day is longer where Joshua was, but at the same time the night has to become longer as well on the other side of the planet. And there was actually a census that was done at some point to figure out, is there some documentation about a long night around that time? We're talking about 1300 BCE. And apparently there is. Except that I don't know if we can know the exact date, if it's exactly the same date that that this happened. By the way, we know the exact date when Joshua made the sun stop. It's the third day of Tammuz, which in modern Jewish history is the day of the passing of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And in a certain sense, one might say that the sun stopped in the sky on that day for many, many Jews. We don't know the exact date that Moses made the sun stop, but the same principle holds, that if the entire world is going to know about what Moses is doing, then this is the type of, one might say, miracle or control of nature that Moses had to demonstrate. So Moses is the second person who did this, and Rashi, the classic medieval commentary, writes that exactly this point. He takes it from a medrash, from Midrash Tanchuma. We'll get into this a little bit more in a moment. The third person is a story that's brought in the Talmud, in the tractate of Ta'anit, about somebody called Nakdimon ben Gurion. Now, you may not know this about Ben Gurion, who founded the modern state of Israel. He was the guy who was the first prime minister and so on. His name wasn't Ben Gurion when he was in Russia. His name was Green. His last name was Green. When he came to the land of Israel, before the state was founded, there was a custom by many people to try to Hebraicize their foreign names. Green obviously means just green. And he took his name and he changed it into the name of this Talmudic figure, Nakdimon ben Gurion. It's also a very good idea because Ben Gurion, this man from the Second Temple period, was considered to be one of the great wealthy people of Israel at that time. In fact, he was so wealthy that he alone had enough food stocked up that they could have survived dozens of years of the Roman war against Jerusalem. They didn't have to give in. The reason that they didn't give in is that they eventually the Romans were able to conquer them, was because there were zealots in Jerusalem at that time that didn't want to survive. They wanted to fight the Romans. So what they did was they burnt the storehouses of wheat that were in Jerusalem at that time, and they forced the hand of the people to actually make war with the Romans. The rabbis in that generation told them that they were against this. They were against fighting the Romans. In fact, they wanted to make peace with the Romans. Famous is Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who, before the war started, after the siege had begun, but there was no war yet, it was just a siege of Jerusalem, he's famous for making peace with the Romans, understanding that the time of Jewish sovereignty was over, and the deal he made with them was that, give me the city of Yavne, which is a city outside of Jerusalem. Today it's about a 40-minute drive from Jerusalem. And give me Yavne, where the Sanhedrin was at that time. There were many scholars at that time, many rabbis. And he said, we can't fight you. We don't want to fight you. We want to continue developing the Torah. And so he made peace with them. And then the people that were left in Jerusalem were actually the Zealots, who wanted to fight the Romans on purpose. In any case, before this all happened, just before the siege, there's a commandment to visit Jerusalem 3 times a year. It's called the pilgrimage, Aliyah L'Regel. And one year there wasn't enough water. Nagdibon ben Gurion bought 12 wells, which at that time was an astronomical amount, from the Roman gentry, and he made a deal with them that he would return the value of these wells in other wells after the wet season, and if not, he would give them the weight of the wells, the weight of the water in the wells in silver, which was an incredible amount, but he apparently had that. And there's a whole story about it, which unfortunately we're not going to have time now to tell, but part of it was his trust in God that there would be enough water, and on the last day in which he had to return the water to the Roman nobleman, he stopped the sun, literally stopped it, in order for the wells that he was giving back to fill up with enough rainwater that was then raining. And then they claimed it was already night, but then the clouds dispersed and they found that actually it was still day. Now, the question here really is, what makes it possible for someone to make the sun stop? What does that even mean? What does it mean for a person to have such control over nature? Now, granted, we're not at that level. We don't have control over nature to make the sun stop moving, the earth stop spinning. But we all encounter moments in which we ask the Almighty to change nature for us. Every single person who has faith has a feeling that my relationship with God should be such that I can ask for this. I may not get a positive answer, but I want to be able to ask for this. I want to be able to present my case and ask God to change nature for me. When does that happen? So there's a beautiful gematria that Rav Ginsburg taught about this, that the names of these 3 people who made the sun stop, Moses, Joshua, and Nagdimon ben Gurion, together equals 3 times truth. Truth in Hebrew is emet. And when he taught this, he gave 10 different interpretations of what this truth means. But really, to sum it up, it means that you have to be a man of truth, a woman of truth. To be a person of truth means that, first of all, of course, you don't say anything that's untrue. But truth also means to be true, not just to your word, but to your actions. In other words, that when a person decides on a course in life, it's to stay the course. It's to be truthful even to yourself. But it also means to constantly be searching for what your mission in life is. To be true to yourself, it's not enough to just set the course and follow it. You have to know what the course is. That is the deepest element of truth in each one of us. So a person who who is following his mission in life is capable of asking God to change nature for them. Why? Because the real purpose of the world is not for nature. The real purpose of the world is for Adam and Eve. The real purpose of the world is for a human being who has free will. Nature is governed by laws. Everything in nature is under those laws. It can't break those laws. But the whole purpose of having a human being is being able to choose. The power of choice that we have, sometimes called free will, but really this moment by moment meaning of being a human being, which is that I have to choose the truth at every moment. That is what sets us above nature. That is why we can come to God and say, because I need this for my mission, because I need this for my directive in life, for the reason that my soul came down into the world, I ask you, God, to change the laws of nature at this moment. And that happens. And it happens because, again, God wants to show you that the human destiny is higher than natural destiny. Now, this has a lot to do with many things. I don't want to get too political here, but one of those things has to do with climate change. In other words, what comes first? There's a lot of people that say we're overpopulating the planet. What does overpopulation actually mean? It means that you don't have faith in the value of human life. The fact that every man and woman has children, they have offspring, is a testament to the fact that we believe that God placed man here to do something more than nature. So there really can't be a contradiction between this idea of overpopulation and the health of the planet. It really doesn't work that way. It's much more complex an issue. It's more about the question of, once you have people in the world, which you should always have children and grandchildren. That's the purpose of life, is to increase the image of God in the world. The image of God in the world is human beings. Once you have them, it's to teach them to be truthful people. And again, the most important thing is to be truthful to your mission in life, to be truthful to what you need to do in life. And when that works, and when you're doing it the right way, there's no contradiction against nature. It's being above nature, but it's not going to destroy nature. It's going to show that the human destiny is to use nature the right way in order to fulfill the purpose that God has given to humanity. So thank you very much for joining today. Hope to see you tomorrow.